Welcome back. In my third book, Easy, Sexy, Raw, I wrote about the Doomsday Project. The Doomsday Project, or the Vault, as it is also known, is an air-conditioned bunker where the Norwegians have stored heritage seeds, billions of them. Why did they do this? Because they're afraid of what's going to happen to life as we know it due to the introduction of genetically modified foods, also known as GMOs. Well, that's their solution to this growing problem. But what can we do about it? I didn't know, so I turned to my friend Max Goldberg for answers. Hi, Max. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
So, what is a GMO? What is a genetically modified food?
GMO stands for genetically modified organism. Basically what it is food made in a laboratory. Until the last 20 or 30 years, this is food that has never existed before in humanity. So it's made in a laboratory, and more often than not, they're inserting viruses or bacteria into these plants.
Why do they do that?
They do that because GMOs were designed to sell more chemicals. So when they spray chemicals on the plants, they don't want it to kill the plants. They want it to kill everything around it, whether it's weeds or pests. And that's why GMOs were designed. So
basically, genetically modified organisms are bug resistant.
Exactly. The plants are resistant to the chemicals.
All right, so why are they so bad for our health? You really seem to hit on that point.
Well, no long-term studies have ever been done on humans, but when you look at the studies that have been done on animals, it's pretty appalling. You're talking about liver damage and kidney damage, and when they've done fed it to hamsters, the third generation of hamsters weren't able to produce babies. So that's the real safety issues, but the real big issue in our country, Carol, is that genetically modified foods are not labeled. So people do not know that they are eating genetically modified foods. Now, over 60 countries around the world require GMOs to be labeled, but the U.S. does not. And why is that? According to the Food and Water Watch, the ag biotech industry, which owns all these GMOs, has spent $572 million on campaign contributions and lobbying to make sure that they don't get labeled.
What's the ag?
The agriculture biotech industry.
Right. What is that?
So these are the companies that design these genetically modified foods, but these are the companies that also sell the farmers the chemicals. So they're not only just selling them the seeds.
They're selling them the chemicals that go along with it.
Exactly.
But you know what question pops up in my head? Aren't these people also eating this food?
Well, it's a really good question. I don't know if they're eating it or not. I would doubt that they're eating it, but they'll tell you they may be eating it. I'm not sure what they're eating, but you know and I know that people who really care about our health, we're not eating them. And so the mass population is being fed these foods, but they're not being informed that they're eating these foods.
Wow, this is heavy. So we've got this genetically modified organism that is not real food because it's made in a petri dish, that is being sold all over the world, that is coming onto the market, and they're not being labeled.
They're not.
So we don't even know whether we're eating them or not.
Exactly.
I am seeing some things that come up, like my popcorn said on it, no GMOs. So some are labeling it when there's not genetically modified organisms in it. What can we do to get them to label, to let us know what we're eating?
Well, there are movements in approximately 25 states right now. The biggest one was last year in California, but the opposition, who did not want GMOs to be labeled, spent close to $50 million to defeat this measure. And the one going on right now is in Washington state. They're spending about $20 million to defeat this measure. Why are these companies spending so much money to not disclose what's in their products?
Especially since 90% of the people in the country actually want these labeled.
Exactly. Polls consistently show that more than 90% of the people want GMOs labeled. And here's the craziest thing. The U.S.
As if that wasn't crazy enough. Go ahead.
Here's the U.S. Patent Office gives patents to these genetically modified seeds.
So a patent on food.
Yes, they have a patent. So they say you get a patent because it's unique and different. Yet the FDA says, no, genetically modified food is no different than non-genetically modified food. So the FDA says it's the same thing, and the U.S. Patent Office says it's unique and different. And it's one of the real injustices in our country that GMOs are not labeled.
Wow. So how can we get them labeled? What do we have to do quickly? In our
well, we have to, constantly ask our politicians to support GMO labeling.
So write to your senators, write to your congressmen.
Yes.
Have your voice heard.
Absolutely. We need people involved. Continue to buy organic food because organic food, GMOs are prohibited. Buy non-GMO products. And really, people need to be involved because if we don't have our voices heard, nothing's going to change.
Max, thank you so much for coming on and pointing out this important problem that's happening. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.